Previously on Airbrushing for Newbies. Kind of get the look of that. Now, we want the fire to start from the bottom of the canvas and kind of look like it's coming up throughout the whole thing. Now, what we want is just kind of an area of kind of a cloud look of this deep red. Now, we're going to push this back with a little bit of black, going back over it, to add a little more texture into it. Okay, so we keep going on with this deep red and we're building up a background, creating a cloud look of almost like red clouds throughout the whole entire canvas. So now I'm going to come on the outside edge of the canvas and kind of work my way towards the center, bringing in some of that dark color. Now there's a little tinge of red to it, not much. Okay, now this is just pure red, so now this is going to be our brightest red that you're going to see. From this color on, we're going to go a little bit towards orange. And I'm going to spray in here and just kind of get a little bit closer to what we want the fire to look like. Remember, part one, we took it and we were just really broad with it and kind of just this is going to go over here and a little bit over here. So now with this color, we're going to start shaping it and to where you kind of see what's going on this. You see the way the red is actually out to here, but I'm keeping the orange in a couple inches. Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to be starting out the fire again. We're going to start out with a orange color where we left off, and we're going to keep on working our way out. As we get more and more color going, we're going to start getting tighter and tighter and tighter on all the detail. Today we're going to be using a little bit of freehand stencil work, using the badge of velocity. Let's get started. Let's start out with some golden yellow. This is kind of my go-to yellow color. The actual Wicked Yellow is a little bit pale and very transparent. So if you're going to be working with this color, you might have to lay down either this base or shoot it over white. We use this kind of as a candy yellow for this artwork. That's what we're going to be using. But for the most part, we're going to be using the golden yellow. Now I'm just going to mix it directly in the color cup. Got my high performance reducer, just a little bit of that. I'll bubble it up in the cup, do a little stir on it. Now make sure you always use your color cup cap. It's very messy. We end up moving really fast when we're doing the fire, especially when you're doing like on a hood or something where you have your airbrush tilted down. Don't want to spill on it. You don't want to have to work backwards. Okay, I'm going to test the color in an area that I know is going to go real bright. Now I'm putting it on and it's very transparent. So to opaque that up a little bit, I'm going to add a couple drops of white to get it to be a little more opaque on the color. Okay, now you can see how much brighter and more opaque that yellow is. The problem is we'll get a kind of a whitish hue to it, so we'll take the color, the yellow again, and transparent back over the top of that. And what that'll do is that'll kind of push it into all the other colors and bring out that vibrancy of that yellow we're looking for. Okay, on this stage, I'm going to grab some of my stencils. I use Insane Customs for stencils. What I'm going to do is lay down the stencil as a kind of a shield so I don't spray into my other colors. And what that'll do is that'll give me a nice hard edge. So with that hard edge, we can create the illusion that the color is kind of working over the top of the other colors. Now what I want to do with this stencil is just kind of create the look of a kind of a slight hard edge, but then soften it up, come back over it and soften it up. Still a little too opaque. I'm going to go ahead and, not opaque enough. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more white in it. Okay, that's a little bit, now you can actually see the hard edge that we're creating. Now, after I do the stencil, I'll come back in freehand and I'll just kind of soften that line up a little bit and carry it throughout the fire. So you don't have that real stenciled look, but you have that sharp edge. Same with this one up here, I'll do the same exact thing. Over here. So this is where you start getting into your detail of the fire. And you don't want to get rid of all your other colors. You want to make sure that you keep the brightness towards center, or at least to one edge, and then allow all the other red. The dark red comes all the way out to here. So we have the dark red, and then it slowly goes into this bright yellow. So now this is not our last stage. We're actually going to knock this back down and then put another color on top of that. Now you don't need to do this stage everywhere. You can leave some of the areas of the fire kind of dark. But what you want to try to stay away from is putting this yellow on the black. If you put it on the black, you're going to get a really big green shade to it. So you want to stay away from that chance of getting that greenish color in there. So you can see how I used the stencil along with some freehand work. So you get that kind of that blow of color, and then you go back in and you get all your detail in there. Okay, now we're going to have feathers working out here, so let's go ahead and start creating some of these feathers. Like I said, this is where we're going to get into our details, so this stage will take probably one of the longer stages. Alright, so we're going to continue in here creating these feathers out of this yellow. We could use a stencil, or you can just go in freehand and work those colors in. Now, because we don't want the bird to look like it's a bird in fire, we want to make it look like the fire is creating the bird. We're going to kind of bounce around a little bit and not have it to where it is a complete airbrushed bird inside the fire. So what we'll do is we'll kind of create with the stencil, go in, kind of blow off the edge of the stencil, and then go in there freehand and just kind of freehand work in the colors. Like I said, we're going to push this back with a little bit of that orangish yellow, so we can go a little bit brighter in areas we normally wouldn't go. You'll see how we kind of push it all back. Come in and create some of the detail out of his eyes. Now, to do these real small lines, I'm actually almost dragging the needle on the canvas. So I get really close in here while I'm doing these small little tiny lines. Come over to this side and work this wing. Take the stencil and just kind of blow a little bit of that color off, and you get that nice hard edge. And then we come in here and we just kind of soften it up a little bit with the airbrush. And then we can bring that color and start that flow working up. We'll come over here and create the same over here. And then kind of bring that in. Remember, you don't want to bring that yellow over the black, because if you do that, then there's a chance of the yellow going green. The stencils I'm using are from Insane Custom Stencils. Find them on Facebook, websites, all over the place. Okay, now this side I don't want as pronounced as this side. As the fire goes up, I'm going to go kind of, you'll see a little more wing on this side than you will on this side. I'm going to kind of disappear it and kind of have it turn into almost like the top edge of the fire. I'm going to have this kind of break up here. This will be that part of the wing starting to form. We'll have a little piece coming off. Now the idea behind the flow of it is I kind of think of if pieces were breaking off, how they would kind of flare up and then get small and flare up and get small. So you create the flares at the bottom and then you just have them fizzle off as they go up. You can use all different sides of the stencil. Sometimes you can create a little inside area and cause that to look like it just kind of does that little flare. Bring that color kind of softly fade it over. I want to lightly fill up the center of his wings with this color. I see with the orange I created a little look of a stencil area there, so we'll come in with the yellow, step it in just a little bit, and then create a little burst there. And that'll kind of shape his body up a little bit. Alright, so now we have the upper half done. Gonna move down to the lower half. Come down the center of his legs and just kind of create the look of feathers going, starting here. And we'll kind of put that into the background as we go. You go back in to start doing some detail, check for your tip dry, clean off any. You got white in here, in this yellow. So you're going to get a little more tip dry than if it was just the pure color. Okay, now I'm going to create kind of a feather look here. A little more detail than what we normally would do. But it is our canvas, we can do what we want. Doesn't have to look like anything. Get further out, we'll just do a little bit of the yellow. Just kind of create the ending of his tail feathers. Mix up a little more yellow. Give it a quick stir with the back feeding. Now remember, we're working from dark to light, so as you do this, remember that you're not going to go back in with shadowing color. So when you do this, think of, okay, the shadow's already there, we're just bringing out the highlight areas. So whatever we want to jump out to the front, that's the area where we're going to be spraying now. So all your background colors are already done. Now if you have to go in there with a dark red, you can always go back in there. Just sometimes you have to come back in with all the other colors in order to make that background color look right. Now to clear out the airbrush, sometimes you'll see me spray in the center down here, because all that's going to go bright yellow. So I can go ahead and clean out the airbrush and do what I need to do in that area. Okay, now I'm going to blow this color in the center of the canvas. Now this is when I'll switch sometimes over to a bigger stencil. So now I can throw in a bigger arc. Bring that color down, and then we soften up the line just a little bit. come in here and soften this line up. Blow out just a little bit. Soften it up. Alright, that part of the fire is done. Now we'll come over to this side. Get that little flare going. So down here we have to remember that this whole area has to carry the weight of the bird. So all in this area is going to be kind of softened up with this yellow. And then if we want to, we could bring a couple layers on the forefront. Just kind of look like it comes up here. What I'm creating now is just the kind of the layering of the fire. We did all the dark red, medium red, orange, and now yellow. Now I'm going to take orange and go over this color. I'm going to kind of knock this and push this back a little bit and then come back in with another yellow. So this is kind of how we're getting our layering look. Now we're not using candies, but we're using transparent colors to gain the layers. Okay, so now I got wicked orange. Left the yellow, whatever left over, the yellow was in the airbrush. I'm going to do a 50-50 mixture of the orange and reducer. Give it a little stir. Make sure you use your color cap. And now I'm just going to go in with this orange and just lightly fog it over it. And we're not trying to hide the color. We're just kind of blending it in a little bit. See how that blends it into some of the background color so it doesn't stand out so much. Alright, now I'm going to mix up some more of that yellow color and go back over it. Give my airbrush a quick clean. Sometimes the needle will get a little sticky on the packing, on the needle bearing, and sometimes you just got to pull the needle out, give it a quick clean. Okay, once again we're going to go with that yellow, golden yellow. A little bit of the wicked white. And a little bit of the high performance reducer. Mix it up just a little bit. Using the top of a paintbrush. And a little back pressure. I like having an airbrush laying around because I could use the bristles to clean inside. So what I'll do is I'll throw a little bit of acetone in there and clean it up with the bristles and spray it through. Okay, picking back up our stencils. We'll check this color, see how it works. Spray it in an area that you know you're going to be covering. It's a little transparent. I'm going to throw a little white in it. Remember, if it's too bright, we could always push it back with some orange. We could always go back over it with a little bit of the transparent orange or over-reduced orange. Check it again. It's better. Now I'm going to come a little bit inside of where we were working before with this last color. So now I'm starting to work a little more towards center, and pretty soon I'll just be touching just little tiny areas of the center. So we'll come in here, throw a little bit of highlight. So now we're starting to get the brightness of the fire that we want. Now you can see how I'm staying inside of where we were last time. This was our last color here, and now I'm into this area. Okay, now if you wanted to come in here and create a new area over on the black, then you actually have to go all the way back to the beginning and start again with the deep red. Because you don't want to take your light color and go on top of the black. But if you have color lined up and you want to just bring in a hot spot, you could always come in and just create that lightly and go in there. Now you can see how it doesn't look the same as what we have here. It's because you didn't have the color underneath it to help build up that color. So what we'll do is as we come in here, we'll spray a little bit of orange over this to blend it into the other colors. So creating a new lick while you're already at this stage here, you kind of have to go backwards. You have to go back to the beginning and kind of start in that area again. So that's why the mapping, when we first started out, that's why we got so much area of the deep color, was so we can actually move and change around while we were going. If we didn't do such a broad background, then you wouldn't be able to change as easily. Now as you get further into the stages like where we're at now, to actually just come in and create a whole new area, you're going to have a really oddball looking piece there. It needs that background. Now at this stage I like to come in and do a little more freehand lines, kind of create the look of the fire, kind of creating different shapes. Still within the orange area, but just adding a little bit more freehand look. When I do detail lines, I like to place one hand on the canvas. So that way I can kind of control the airbrush, I don't bounce around as much. Now working in the upper area, you'll see me switch the stencil around and kind of use different sections of it. I try to mimic what I've already done, just kind of a little bit tighter towards the inside of what I've done. I don't feel that you have to hit every single area that you've done before. Kind of the idea is to create new licks on top of what you've already done. I think the hardest part about doing the fire is actually getting the fire to look like it's layers stacked on top of layers. Because when you look at fire, you're actually looking through all the different layers to create that image of fire. So you have to have that very dark color that's a distance away from you, and then getting brighter as you get closer to you. So as it gets closer to you, you need those licks to stay within the background but you also have to create its own, each layer has to have its own vibe going through it. So, something to think about while you're working on it. Now you can see here how I have the dark color back here, then colors coming all the way up to the color we just created, which is inside all of it. Yet it's its own look. We're not trying to take that area and make it look like it's the whole entire area that we started out with, but it has its own movement as it goes up. Okay, now I'm going to move down here, finish up the bottom edge of the fire. Just do a little bit of detail on these feathers. We don't want to go too much because we didn't create too much detail in the upper feathers. Kind of bring out his feet a little bit by hitting just the foreground of the knuckles. What I'm going to do is kind of make this look like it's a twisted fire kind of coming up here, creating his leg. And you can see how I change it as I go. I didn't want it to look too much like it was a bird in the fire, just the fire creating that bird. So like on this feather here, we could bring it out. And we have orange here, so I could bring this yellow into this area. I could make it look like this feather is being created by a little bit of fire coming out of that area. Alright, now we got the fires out here. Just come in just a little bit. Create that lick. I can put a little stencil there. Kind of get that shape going. Now if you get it too wet, just kind of stand back with the air. Blow it dry, and then come back in. Now you can see how I have it coming up, but there's nothing to continue that with. So what I'll do freehand wise is I'll come in here and just kind of create a little bend on it. And that'll make it look like it's coming back into this part here. So if you get a stencil look to where it kind of doesn't really follow the shape of it, then just come in freehand and create that kind of flow of the fire that you want. Switch back over to my bigger stencil. Well, it's nice to have multiple stencils. Gives you kind of a choice of different curves, different stuff to work with. Let's Again, I want to blow in a decent amount of the yellow here. Carry the weight of the fire. Remember, you want the center kind of a little more filled, a little more heavy body to kind of carry the whole entire weight of what's going on. So you don't want to start real narrow and then have it kind of go out and come back in. You want it to start wide and kind of work its way up, just like you would on a fire pit, or just more people associate that. All right, so now we're gonna mix up a little bit of just the straight yellow, no orange in it whatsoever, just the wicked golden yellow. And a question was asked, when I'm using the stencils, what I'll do is I'll lay the stencil down. And I'll spray onto the stencil, off of the stencil edge. So I'm actually allowing that stencil to create that line. And then I pull the stencil away, I come back in freehand and I just lightly hit that edge. And what that does is that kind of gets the stencil look away from looking like just a stencil. It just looks like a hard edge in the fire. Now this is a mixture 50-50 of high performance reducer and golden yellow. Now this is kind of our per se candy layer. Mix it up a little bit. Now if it feels that it's just way too thin, then you could always add more paint to it. But what we're trying to do is just knock down the whiteness of this color. What you'll see it does is it kind of adds a little bit of a vibrancy to that yellow. See how it kind of makes that yellow look like it's glowing a little bit more? Now because this is color, it's not candy, you got to watch where you put it. You don't want to go too much over your reds and oranges, because you'll brighten those up also. So you can see how this is deepening up that yellow. If there's areas that look a little too opaque, you can come back in and hit it again. And bring some of that orange in. Kind of bright yellow, I don't know how to explain it really. It's one of those you gotta see it to believe it type deals. Alright, I gotta mix up a little bit more. Like I said, this is nice when you have the bottles. Do a nice siphon feed airbrush, especially if you're doing fire on something that's very large size. Nice to pre-mix all your colors. Okay, now with a little bit of this color left in, I'm going to come in with white, and I'm going to really brighten up this yellow now. Do probably about 25% of the white to 75 part white. Yeah, 75 part white. We'll try that. With a little bit of yellow, probably 25% yellow, I think. A little bit of reducer. Can we go 110? Let's go like 120 on it. Okay, we'll do a little bit of this color in here. See, in the color cup, you almost have a really creamish white color. On the canvas, it just looks like bright yellow. Now we're going to go back over that with straight Createx yellow, Wicked Color yellow, and it's going to really make a bright yellow. So now we have to get really tight to our surface. And we don't need near as much of this. This is just going to be the very brightest yellow, kind of a highlight color. Now this is where I'll get creative and I'll start doing some real small lines and kind of give that almost like a veining look to the fire. Just something that I like doing. Now this color, you have to stay inside of that yellow. You do this on the outside, it'll kill the depth instantly. Now because I'm spraying so little amount of it, we don't need to really go in with the stencil. If you're in an area you want to create a hard edge, you can always go in with one. There's no science to this. Come in here and create a little bit. Come in with the airbrush and just soften it up. A little part of a feather here that's going to catch a lot of light. Soften it up, kind of blend that in. So I'm leaving some of the oranges around here to give the head to look like it comes away from the body. Now we just add the highlights that we want in the eagle's face, the phoenix face. I'm doing a lot more freehand work. Create just little tiny lines, kind of give the direction of flow. This is pretty much the last airbrushing stage you're going to be doing. So this is a stage you really want all your detail to look exactly where you want it. Just gonna add the highlights on the knuckles. We're gonna go a little bit over on time on this class, just so I can show you the finishing of it. Remember to come back in with the airbrush and soften up those lines. Now if you want to come in here and kind of create a little bit of texture in here, see, I'm staying inside of all the other work that I've done. Alright, now I'm going to go in with just the Wicked Yellow. Now in this stage, since I have white in it, I do not want any white in that color cup. So I'm going to clean out the airbrush real fast. Okay, now if you look, this has a real white hue to it. It's not really that vibrant. So we're going to come in with the Wicked Yellow. And spray that unreduced directly over the top of that area. You're going to notice that that yellow just comes to life. Might not do it on camera as much as it does it in person. Try to stay away from the black, otherwise you'll get a green shift. Alright, so now that's all that's left is to throw down a clear coat on it. On canvases, I like using a satin clear, so that way it doesn't reflect a lot of light. It'll also bring up all the other colors once we get that clear coat on there. So once again, Airbrushing for Newbies on Facebook. Thanks to all our sponsors, Badger Airbrush, Auto Air Colors, Insane Custom Stencils, J-Tape, and all the other guys out there. Thank you very much for making it happen. We'll see you guys next week. Don't know what we'll be doing yet. On Airbrushing for Newbies, let us know your thoughts.